Welcome back, everyone. My name is Anne Rayton, and this is Who's That Image Consultant? And we are back in Australia, and we're going to be talking to Nicky McMillian, who is in, and I didn't ask you, Nicky, is it New South Wales or Victoria?
In New South Wales, right on the New South Wales-Victorian border.
That's why I was getting confused. And it's a little country town called Corryong. Is that correct?
Corowa.
Corowa. Okay. Corowa. So maybe me not doing my homework. All right. So Nicky has a most interesting career, and I do these interviews because I know that there are a lot of image consultants who are in the industry, and it's helpful to know about another person's stories, their highs and lows. And if you're thinking about becoming an image consultant, it's good to get some really down-to-earth information about what it's really like. No gloss, no cover-up, just the simple truth of what it's like to run an image consultant business. So today we are talking to Nicky, and Nicky has a most interesting history of what she did before and what she's doing now. So we welcome you here, Nicky, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, Nicky, you started off as a corporate job in the arena of politics. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Politics and journalism, actually, Anne. I started out, my father used to always say, you ask a lot of questions, you should be a journalist or a policewoman. And I ended up becoming a journalist. And I was interested in politics. So I, as my journo colleagues would say, you've gone to the dark side, when I went to work for a federal senator. And my career basically was jumping from journalism to politics, politics to journalism, back to politics.
Cool. So you started off as a journalist. I didn't know that, but that makes perfect sense. So when you moved over into the political arena, what sort of work did you do in that arena?
Well, I started off being a media advisor for a federal senator as well as policy. So that I found that quite interesting. But I went back, after I went back to journalism, I was headhunted by another senator to come and work for her in opposition. So I'd previously worked in government, and I thought to myself, why the heck would I want to go to opposition? But we actually had so much fun, and in terms of really cutting your teeth in terms of politics. So not just media, but it was policy development and political, and it was a lot of fun and really enjoyed it.
Oh, I bet you've got some really interesting stories behind the scenes.
Yeah, you could. I think one thing I found was, and I think I mentioned this to you before, is that I think intuitively I knew the power of clothes in terms of how we can communicate with people and how people perceived us. And if anything, that was so evident in the field of politics. It was incredibly important to dress appropriately, as I mentioned, there's something called the similarity attraction effect, whereas we relate to people who dress similar to us. So quite often you'll see images of politicians out in the country area, and they might be in a suit, and to the farmer or the regional people they're talking to, at a subconscious level, they would find it harder to connect with them than if they turned up in a more casual, smart attire. It was really interesting.
I guess, you know, you would look at that person and think, well, how could they understand what I'm going through? They're a city person rather than, you know, being here in the country. They can't possibly understand my world. Is that
absolutely
what you're meaning? Okay, so you were working in the politics, and then somehow you became an image consultant. How did that happen?
Well, we won government, and the senator I was working for was given a ministry, and I worked for her in the ministry. But what I found was I spent all my time in Canberra, and by then I had a little girl, Ollie, and she was about 2 or 3, and I wasn't seeing my family. So I think I was tiring of politics, and I was getting a little bit disillusioned, not with my boss. So I've been blessed to work with amazing, hardworking, genuine politicians. There is such a thing. But I think at the end of the day, and I guess in my job, working in politics and even media, you got to meet the most amazing people in business and community leaders. And I guess in a sense, they inspired me. So when I decided to leave politics, I thought, I wanted to go into business. I had no idea at first what it was. And then it was an image consultant in my area in Albury, Sandra Martin, who's a very dear friend of mine. And she basically changed my life because I went and saw her. I had some body image issues, having a baby and, gaining weight. It was in my head in that respect. And that was whole life transformation. I thought, wow, that's really cool. If I can make some kind of contribution to other women, maybe even politicians, then that's something I really wanted to do.
I didn't know Sandra. You had seen Sandra. She is such a wonderful, wonderful woman. Okay, so how did you initiate getting in? You went and you found a company training, and was that training like I know you didn't train with us, and that's not the issue here at all. I just want to know that when you did the training, was what you learned was going to involve image consulting? Is it what you expected, and what did you find that you wanted to add into that training with outside information?
Well, I actually started off doing a stylist course, and that was 4 days, and I did not feel confident going out and starting a business with what I learned in just 4 days, and I felt that there was more to it. So that was a learning curve, and that's I guess why I got into image consulting. I felt that there was more to it, and I guess with my background in media and fascination in human behavior and communication, I knew that there was more to it, and that's what attracted me to image consulting. So I did my homework, and there were lots of fabulous companies out there, and I settled for the Academy of Professional Image, in which Claire, one of your trainers, she trained me, as well as Imogen, and that's how I came into image consulting.
And so once you were an image consultant, I know you've gone on to get some special areas that you really love and now work as almost, I think, your niche. Would that be right to say? You've worked in...
Absolutely. Again, I did image consulting, and I think what frustrated me, and I think a lot of image consultants feel this way, is that there's confusion between a stylist and image consulting, and there's no disrespect to styling whatsoever, but I think there needs to be a bit of an education in terms of image consulting is about the whole of image management. And that includes, I mean, you guys are right on it in terms of how you put out your posts and your marketing information about the importance of our non-verbal brand. We talk a lot about personal branding, but what is our non-verbal brand? Our appearance is a major component of our non-verbal behavior. And I gravitated towards that field, and I found that it complemented the image consulting side of business as well.
I think we've come a long way from just thinking it's all about dress, because, as I often say in my posts, we all know well-dressed pains in the necks, right? Where, they may look fabulous, but is their image great? No, it's not, because they're really lacking some social skills or some etiquette skills or just the way they communicate with people. So you've taken on some extra training, yes?
And yes, and I still am. So what I did, I struggled, and I'm sure I'm not alone, when I left a career in which I was quite successful at and very good at, and then you're leaving all that good pay behind and that security you can get in politics to go into business, starting from scratch. I had to re-educate myself, have absolutely no idea about image consulting. So I had to reskill. So I was a bit like a babe in the wilderness, trying to navigate, the complex world of business. And my confidence just plummeted. And I was a little bit lost too. I felt there was a lot of pressure being an image consultant, and I also felt that my marketing wasn't representing truly who I was. So I was listening to Lewis Howes, the greatest School of Greatness podcast, and he was interviewing Vanessa Van Edwards, who was the founder of Science of People. So she's a human behavior investigator and the author of the best-selling book Captivate. I really resonated with Vanessa, and everything what she was talking about was what I was going through. And so I started off doing people schools, so learning about people skills and harnessing those and getting better at that. And then I just absolutely loved it. So then I went on to train to become a body language trainer, and now I'm in the process of finalising my personality certification.
That's fantastic. Look, I think one of the things that makes us all wonderfully different is we find the parts of image we love the most, and then we'll go out and we'll investigate it even more, because even when you train with a company like ours, which is online and takes 40 or 50 hours to do, and or you do several days in class, it's all we can ever give you is a good foundation, and it's up to that person to go, okay, I really love this part, I want to know more about that, or I want, and that's what you've done, and you've created some really interesting things, which I'll get into in a moment. But I also want to ask you, how did you find, you were doing you were virtually doing image in the political arena, and then you would move to, it's a real rural area, right? It's you wouldn't even call it a big country city. It's a little town, right? It's a small rural area. So how did you find working in image business from a small rural area?
Well, our closest centre is Albury-Wodonga, so we are blessed to have that right on our doorstep. So I find that a lot of my work is with business people and business women. I guess the best thing that I ever did was join the Chambers of Commerce and become active in them. So that in terms of the Albury-Wodonga, and that helped with my network and joining the business women's group. So that certainly helped get my name out there in a rural town. And also we have Northeast Victoria right on our doorstep as well. So in our rural towns, I find it's probably more the regional businesses and outside of the area. I think sometimes there's this misconception that an image consultant is expensive, and as we all know, I talked about my own experience. It is a life-changing experience. It's an investment, a life-changing investment. So, in working to do that, but also having honed on what your niche is and who your niche is, that certainly helps. And some of those people in regional areas, yeah, they are, or in rural towns, but a lot of them tend to be in regional centres.
So you've niched it right down. You've gone, my target market are the professionals, and I'm going to reach them through those regional areas. That's cool. And do you use any other form of marketing rather than word of mouth and Chamber of Commerce? Do you do much on social media, or using things like Zoom and Skype and all to talk and contact people?
I do obviously networking, and I do a lot of social media as well. And sometimes you hear about consistency, and there was this influencer, Gary, I can't remember his last name, starts with V, Vander, whatever his name is, and I was listening to his book and almost had a meltdown and listening to him, because I felt like, well, how am I going to get some sleep? How am I going to get some balance? And I became really disillusioned with social media, and I thought it's sucking up all my time, and I felt, and then just when you're starting to wonder, next thing someone calls you, like Dairy Australia, and you get this speaking gig, and and these things happened. So it's persistence. I also do podcasting. My background, my strength is writing. I absolutely love writing. I guess that's journalism and everything like that. So I've had articles published in Business Insider, HuffPost, and some other publications, and I absolutely love that, getting my name out. Blogging, yeah, so a whole host of ways that I do it. Marketing is something I have struggled with, trying to nail it while getting that balance, life balance.
It's difficult. It is difficult. And
when you're solo,
you're part of running a farm, a busy farm as well. So I'm sure that takes up a lot of your time. So I want to get back now to what you studied extra, the body language, the science of people. That sounds really, really interesting. Tell me how you've incorporated it in your business. What are some of the important things that you've found about that's really added to your knowledge and helping other people? If you've got any stories, that would be great.
I think the biggest thing, Anne, is that we are contagious. And that was a massive aha moment. And I think at a subconscious level, we may know that. So quite often when I talk to people, I said, so what influences us most? Do our facial expressions, our mood influence our facial expressions, or do our facial expressions influence our mood? And as we learned at the recent conference, it's actually both. And when you share this with your clients in coaching, when they realize that it's by changing your facial expression can have that physiological hormonal change in us to make us feel better, that's a really cool hack to have and keep at the back of your mind. And it's something I taught Ollie, she's now 7, and she loves that, and she's taught her little friends as well. So it's just this really interesting, did you know, quite simple, but just having that self-awareness. And the other thing that works so beautifully with image consulting is, as I said, people don't realize it until you point out the power of their non-verbal brand, which we talked about, the whole of, well, how are we communicating, how are we interacting, be it our appearance, be it our body language or our voice tone. This is powerful in our overall image management, and it works so seamlessly and so beautifully in with what I do from the image consulting side of the business, if that makes any sense.
Right, yes. And have you created some of your own programs? Do you have courses
I have
to do with you, or Facebook groups or anything like that?
I haven't done Facebook groups. I'm trying to minimize and trying to simplify the social media side of things. But I have done some replacing awkwardness with awesomeness events. So and the human lab event. So I launched those last year when I rebranded the business. So I still have the What's My Style, but the big focus is on Nicky McMillian body language and communication, which encompasses image consulting. And so the human lab event, we go into details about micro expressions and a lot more detail in terms of body language, as well as ties in again into our appearance, as well as the replacing awkwardness with awesomeness. Having struggled, we have what we call we quite often hear about introverts and extroverts, learning through my training that there's a thing called ambivert, which it's like this massive aha moment, because I thought, why am I socially inept? I honestly thought I had a social problem, and I couldn't understand why, but what it was because I was an ambivert, and I could be introverted in some circumstances and around certain people, and yet extroverted, and realizing that and what my thrive locations were, which was where you're at your best, and trying to put yourself in those situations, and what my survive locations were, where you struggle to survive. You secretly fantasize being home in your pajamas with a bottle of wine and eating yogurt, maybe not eating ice cream, but not drinking a whole bottle of wine for the record. So knowing how to manage yourself and where you're at your best. And I found that was a massive transformation in terms of my confidence, and it helps other people sharing that. It's made a massive difference with people who have attended the events as well.
You know, I find that really interesting because, you know, you spoke at our conference last weekend, and that was absolutely fantastic. And I had an aha moment too with the ambivert, because I thought, okay, that's what I am, because I'm really quite an introverted person, but people sort of see me doing things like that and they go, oh, you're such an extrovert. I go, no, I'm not really, you know. So it's only when I'm turned on, you know, and doing things like that I appear more that. So I thought that was really, really terrific. Where do you see your business going in the future?
I'm actually looking at doing more study. I really enjoy, despite you know, the anxiety. I was just thinking about how far I've come from someone who was always behind the scenes, be it in, you know, reporting in the newsroom, you know, in radio, or behind the notepad taking the notes, or marketing a politician, being behind the scenes for them, to having to force yourself, as we all know in business, to put yourself out there and speak. And I remember the first speaking presentation I had at Chamber, it was only about 15 minutes. I was nervous as anything, and I tried to remember the speech and I stumbled and everything like that. My mentors, they were great, but they challenged me on it as well. And I thought, my gosh, and here I am now doing speaking presentations, holding my events as well. But I love, once I'm up on the stage, I love it because I love what I do. I'm so passionate about it. It just comes alive. So I would like to see myself do more speaking, presenting, to empower. I wouldn't aspire. I don't want to be boring. We want to be anti-boring and captivate people. And writing and contributing and build up the podcast is where my passions lie.
Oh, that's fantastic. When you spoke last week, you certainly captivated all us, and you talk about where you've come from to this. I remember being taught when I was first started that action cures fear. It's never going to be as bad as you think. Just do it, and you realize, hey, it wasn't that bad. And then you start to really enjoy what you do. So that's fantastic. Thank you. That's been really interesting. Now, I'm going to ask you the last question. I nearly ask everyone this, and that is, if you were going back and talking to your younger self who was just starting image consulting, what would you say to them as your piece of advice?
Quite often, I'm going to flip it around. Okay. Quite often we get told to take your blinkers off and, look at things from a broader perspective. When you're starting out, I think it's important to sometimes just put your blinkers on and forget about who else is doing what, because this whole comparison thing, especially when you're starting out and you're unsure of yourself, it can really do your head in and can really play on your mindset. So my advice is to really find out what your passion is. You really got to do that. I mean, at first I started out and I felt like I was, everybody's, and there was no strategy, there was no passion. It was really hard work to come across passionate when you hadn't quite found what you truly loved. So do that, work it out, what floats your boat will get you all excited, and then put your blinkers on and just focus and do your 90-day plans.
That's really great advice. Well, thank you, Nicky. It's been an absolute joy having you here, and it's great to hear so many people's different perspectives. And I've said this before, but one of my big ahas from doing all of these webinars, all these interviews, is I thought most people will come, and when I ask them what they did before, most people will say, I've always loved clothes, I've always loved people, I've dressed my friends, I've done all this, I made clothes for my Barbie dolls, whatever it is. I thought most people would come from that background. It has been 100% opposite. People have come from law and politics and, nursing, and I haven't had yet one person say that. So to me, that's a really big revelation doing this sort of interview. So thank you very much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't wait to learn more about the science of people, wasn't it? Science of people.
Science of people, yes. Tuning for personality.
Thank you very much. So from myself and from Nicky, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join us again next time. Bye for now.
Bye.